Today was the deadline for submitting spring training rosters, which we've just released publicly, and we are, we're very excited about the start of baseball and spring training. Very excited to see a lot of these names on the same piece of paper, and it's obviously a very interesting group with a mix from all around of the organization, different parts of the organization. I'm very excited about getting back to Florida, getting to Sarasota, which is one of my favorite cities in Florida, back to Ed Smith Stadium, to our complex, which in my opinion is the best spring training setup in baseball. Also very excited to be hopping on what I think is the very first nonstop Southwest flight from BWI to SRQ Airport. So I'm extremely excited about that development, and we're just ready to get down there. Brandon, the coaching staff, the baseball operations staff, the players, everyone has been working to prepare for this. Obviously, we've been dealing with an incredible amount of uncertainty since the pandemic started and over this winter, but we're ready to go. And we're gonna our business staff, our ballpark operations staff from Baltimore and also Sarasota have been very carefully planning a safe environment for everyone in Florida. So we're ready to get to work and get these guys ready for the season, and also start to have competition for the opening day roster. There are a lot of players on the list that we released today that have a very good shot of making the opening day roster. There are others that are there essentially for player development purposes, and there's some where there's a mixture of both. So it's really a blend from all around. I think there are some notable absences of some of our top pitching prospects that either were at the alternate site last summer or weren't. And the reasoning for that right now is that a lot of those guys we are projecting to probably start in the mid minors somewhere. We don't know exactly how that's going to shake out. And that minor league season is going to start later than the major league and AAA alternate site action. And so we're being a little mindful of the calendar timelines for getting their arms ramped up, and how long they're going to have to pitch over the course of the year, and what we're trying to do sort of innings and workload wise for those guys. But as opportunities present themselves for some of those guys to join and trickle in, possibly during this camp, we're going to be looking to do that. We do have some spots open still on our list that may be reserved for acquisitions, free agent acquisition, waiver wire stuff. So there will be some evolution with this list, and then obviously as we make moves as we go along, the list can change as well. Also wanted to specifically address Heston Kjerstad's situation and the medical situation that caused him to miss the fall instructional league last fall. And I caution that I'm going to be somewhat limited and precise with what I say, as I always am when it's a non-sports medical topic with players. I always want to allow the players to speak to that in their own words. But he had a episode of myocarditis. He's doing really well, and we're going to have him at the camp, but we're still emerging from the timeline of that. It's a bit of a lengthy recovery timeline, and there are also risk factors associated with the ongoing pandemic that we've had to be very mindful and very careful about with that as well. So he won't be there immediately. I'll provide updates when we're ready to have them. I know he's looking forward to being there and to talking to all of you, and we want to let him talk about that on his own, but everything is going well, but that is still something that's developing in terms of the timeline of his reporting because of that. We also already are hearing about some issues with some international travel that could cause some delayed arrivals from some of these guys. And then we also have the intake processes, which, as we've seen from experience, can cause some some delayed arrivals in the camp. So I think there's going to be some unevenness in terms of guys actually showing up on the field, but this is the group that we're bringing in to start. So with that, I think I've covered everything up top, and happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Mike. We'll open it up now to questions. If you have a question for Mike, you can put your name in the chat and we'll go through them. John Mioli, if you want to start us off, you can go ahead.
Mike, can you explain the distinction between a traditional NRI and the preserves that you guys are calling guys this year?
Yeah, I don't want to make too much of the distinction. It just you know, we are dealing with these guys are going to basically stay there for the most part unless something happens or there's a move or something. So we're not going to have the dynamic that we're used to, where there's like this major league camp and then a minor league camp going on simultaneously in Twin Lakes. Obviously, 72 guys aren't going to make the team, and obviously we're going to need to narrow that. I think a lot of the players on the camp reserve list have a very good chance of making the team. But it just didn't seem right to me to have 72 non-roster invitations to a major league spring training. And, you know, like I said, a lot of these players are on this list for a lot of different reasons. But I do want to be careful to say that I think it's very possible, if not likely, that there'll be guys on that camp reserve list that end up making the opening day roster. We're just going to see what happens.
Rich Dubroff, you're up next. Go ahead, Rich.
Mike, you mentioned a little bit about the AAA and alternate site. Or is AAA the alternate site, or are you going to have AAA, a traditional AAA team and an alternate site?
I think the anticipation right now is that things will start with, are very likely to start in an alternate site type setup, and then as soon as AAA baseball, in the form and fashion that we like to see it, is ready to go, it'll shift gears to that. So we're preparing for that, especially in conjunction with the announcement that the minor league spring training for AA, high A, and low A, the spring training won't start until April. So I think what we're going to have is we're going to have like a month of Major League Baseball, and then some AAA type players who may be in a bit of an alternate site type of setup, and then the real games against other organizations might be later than that. So that's kind of how we're preparing, just in case.
Rock Kubatko, you're up next. Go ahead.
Mike, what else roster-wise do you want to get done before opening day? What are you still looking for?
We're monitoring the pitching market mainly. I mean, I can't rule out signing another position player, but I think we have a lot of competition on that list for our outfield and infield spots. We have a lot of catchers there, so it's not quite as urgent. But we're still looking for arms, and in particular arms that have major league starting experience, and for our rotation battle, I think we've got a bunch of young pitchers that are in the mix for that rotation, which is great. I think a lot of the minor league free agents that we've signed this winter that are on that list that we haven't seen yet are interesting arms, and we're going to get a look at some of those guys too, and they're all pretty much length guys or starters. We have the Rule 5 picks who will be in the mix, but I think if we're able to bring in another veteran major league starter in some way into this camp, we're going to continue looking to do that.
David Laurila, you're up next. Go ahead, David.
Hey, Mike. Historically, teams are pretty hesitant to give knuckleball pitchers an opportunity. Realistically, just how well would Mickey Janis have to throw the ball, to pitch in Baltimore this year?
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing him at the camp. We signed him last year. Mike Snyder, our pro scouting director, has been a big fan of his. And nothing against Mickey. We kind of, we were limited with our alternate site slots. We kind of figured a knuckleballer could train on his own pretty well. And he did keep doing that last summer, and he stayed ready the whole time. So I think it'll be great for the major league staff to get to see him, because we do think he's interesting. And we've seen, like last year with Cesar Valdez, there's guys with neat stories that figure out how to be successful in the major leagues, and we're hopeful that he could be one of them. So he's got a real shot to compete for this club.
Mark Viviano, you're up next. Go ahead, Viv.
Hey, Mike, you spoke at the outset about your excitement for the start of spring training. And for some clubs, that's excited to contend to win a World Series. That being different in the state that you guys are in, what excites you at this point, 3 years into this?
Well, I think there's a lot of talent on that list. I mean, look, this is a young team. There's no question about that. But we saw some really encouraging and strong debuts last year. Those guys are back. We've got more coming that haven't debuted yet, but are kind of knocking on the door, despite what happened last year with the lack of AAA. And now you also see on that list a lot of our young prospects that we've gotten through the draft and recent trades. That I know Brandon Hyde personally, wants to have them there for their own development, but also so our staff can start learning them as well. So this is an organization that's getting more talented by the day and by the year. And our farm system is in excellent shape, and it's only getting stronger. And we enjoy bringing all these guys in one place. It's a very unique year and a very unique spring training. And I think, some of these guys are going to benefit from it. And honestly, there's a lot more minor leaguers that I wish we could squeeze on here, and we'll be looking to do so if and when spots free up, because especially for these young position players, this is a really good experience for them.
Joe Trezza, you're up next. Go ahead, Joe.
Hey, Mike, even though he's technically a camp preserve, will Adley report next week with the pitchers and catchers, or will he be there at a later date? And just in general, how long do you want him to spend down there?
Yeah, absent any travel issues or intake hiccups, the pitchers and catchers will all be there for pitchers and catchers is our plan right now. But there are a couple of pitchers that I'm already hearing are having some international travel issues. So we'll just kind of see what shakes out there in terms of when exactly they show up. We've also got a little bit of a unique situation this year. I imagine I got to think about it. The Pittsburgh Pirates may be the only other team in this situation, but we're in order to do social distancing properly inside our facility, we have we don't want to fit all of these staff and players into the Ed Smith Baseball Operations Center at one time. So we will be utilizing the Twin Lakes facility. But it's not going to be like a major league, minor league thing. It's just going to be a logistical daily schedules up to Brandon and Tim Cousins, who goes where, what day. So depending on the day's activities, the game lineup, there may be days where established major league players go do their work at Twin Lakes, and vice versa. There may be days when young 20-year-old A-ball players are at Ed Smith for that day. So that's another dynamic that's going to be new here.
Dan Connolly, you're up. Go ahead.
Yeah, Mike, kind of follow up on that. I mean, you had talked about, guys like Rodriguez or Hall and the young arms, not kind of ramping them up now and letting that go because of, they're not going to be in the top part of the minors. You would think the similar situation with position players like Rutschman, Westberg, Henderson would all not be in the, at the AAA start. So what are your plans with them? And will they go back? Will they stay in Florida? And what was the reasoning in having those guys besides the obvious need for extra catchers?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard for me to make too strong of declarative statements while we're in this pandemic environment about what's going to happen logistically. But our expectation at this point is that anyone that is at this camp that does not make the major league team or go to AAA or go to the alternate site and whose season won't really start until May, that they will be able to remain in Sarasota and train with us under coaching supervision on the backfields. But I mean, who knows what's going to happen? But that's what it's looking like right now. So I think there'll be a lot of players in this list that end up falling into that category. Yeah, I mean, look, this guy I talked about a lot last year. I mean, a kid like Gunnar Henderson, not getting all those at bats. I mean, thankfully we were able to get him to the alternate site and to instructs, and he benefited a ton from it. But these are formative years and formative at bats for these position players. We're a little bit more worried about that dynamic than for the pitchers. So we just want to get some of these guys here to see live pitching or track pitches and be around our coaches and all that stuff. And obviously we have to make decisions with space constraints, but I think a lot of the position players on that list are obviously people for whom we have very high hopes for the future. So it was a priority for us, and we'll continue to try to get some guys here as opportunities allow.
To follow that real quick, Mike, would you consider pushing guys to AAA that maybe would have started AA just because you can get them in game situations?
Yeah, I mean, I think it'll be a consideration. If we're in full blown game situations, I think the difference would be a little different. If it's an alternate site and then we've got backfields going in Sarasota, probably pretty similar. So I don't know that it would come into play there, but there are some, I think there are some pitchers in particular that where they start will be impacted by the fallout of the major league roster, how the major league roster shakes out and how guys look in this camp. Like in particular, Kevin Smith and Kyle Bradish, who aren't on this list yet. I think there's an argument to start them in AA or AAA. That was just complicated by the loss of the minor league season last year. Those are two guys that clearly would have started in AA last year, and they weren't able to play AA baseball. So we're going to be flexible on some of those cases, and there's going to be a trickle down effect from this camp on what happens to some people.
Steve Molesky, you're up. Go ahead.
Like in a lead up to signing Félix Hernández, did anyone in the organization get to see him throw, even if it was only on video, in those weeks and months leading up to that? And what gives you encouragement that after his tough 2019, he can find something to give you what you want?
Yeah, not really. We all saw him in person in Northport at the new Braves facility last year. He looked great. And then the shutdown happened. I mean, obviously he's been keeping his arm in shape and keeping his body in shape. But recently there's not a whole lot to go on there. He's a Hall of Famer. He's got a lot of moxie and pitchability in this phase of his career. And I think we were hopefully seeing, what that Félix Hernández looked like with the Braves last spring. And, he had a couple opportunities and he eyed our situation and it was attractive to him. So, we'll see. There's going to be a lot of unknowns going to this camp. A lot of these guys haven't played in a while. And that's why we're doing this. And I actually think spring training performances and spring training exhibitions of skill are going to probably be a little bit more meaningful than they have been in the last few years, just because we're dealing with, these are some guys here that haven't played in a year in an organized fashion. No one's seen them in a year, really. So we're going to have to watch everything and probably put a lot of stock on what happens here in a lot of cases.
Nathan Ruiz, you're up next. Go ahead, Nathan.
Hey, Mike. I know you like your outfield depth, but do you see Jahmai Jones getting any time out there, or is he strictly going to be an infielder?
I think, it's hard for me to say for sure without us kind of having our own evaluation, which we'll make when he gets there. But I certainly think that we'll preserve that option going forward. He has more experience out there, so I imagine it'll be easier to just kind of keep that tool in his toolbox. But we want to see the second base and push on the second base because I think, he was making progress and it was going well. And that was a recent conversion for him. He's very athletic. So we'll probably keep that as a priority going into this camp, but I think he's going to continue to be a guy you can pretty easily stick into the outfield, and he'll take to it.